Welcome to today's episode of the Creative Vulnerability series, showing people my creative process and teaching about the 4 stages of creative process. Today we're going to focus on the 7 mental states for creative work and using environmental psychology to induce different states for the different stages. Hi, Carlton. So let me reduce the size of this. So you can see more of the background. And I'm going to quote from the book that I've been using for these lives, Mind Management, Not Time Management, Productivity When Creativity Matters by David Kadavi. And so today's live is going to focus on this quote in particular. One way to create your own rituals for getting into the right mental state for the task at hand is to change your environment. According to Donald, who is one of the experts he quoted in the book, who is an environmental psychologist. According to Donald, to be more creative, look for open spaces, especially with a view. To be more analytical, look for closed spaces. So for the explore, generate, prioritize, and recharge mental states, go for open spaces. For research, polish, and administrate mental states, go for closed spaces. So as you can see here, the 7 mental states are already listed here. They are explore, generate, prioritize, recharge, research, polish, and administrate. And you need different mental states for different stages of the creative process, right? So, for example, for the preparation stage, you might need to be in the explore mental state, right? For the incubation state, you might need more of the generate, mental state. And for the illumination part, which is that quicker flash of insight, you need a relaxed, recharged mental state, right? And then for the verification part, uh, that is when you need to go into the research, polish, and administrate mental states, right? Such as editing your work. And interestingly enough, the part about open spaces is actually backed up by indigenous science as well, by the teachings of my indigenous Hinduism and Buddhism, where we actually have a practice called sky gazing, looking at the space between you and the sky, which, by the way, is exactly why you can see here, I wrote down for the illumination stage, I said, for the incubation stage, I said, look at the space between the sky and you and then rest. Because that's how you generate ideas. So that's great for the generate state, mental state as well, right? And so in the book, he even recommends, going into to a high-rise building so that you have like the bird's eye view of things, or going to the top of a mountain if you want to go into that, explore and generate mental states as well. Just inviting a few more people to be on this live. Hey, Carlton, let me know if you have any questions. So yeah, and that will help you get into the prioritize or explore or generate a mental states, even the recharge mental states when you're in open spaces. Interestingly enough, environmental psychology has a non-spiritual explanation, more of a pure biological or biopsychological explanation for why open spaces help you be more creative and generate more ideas and help you be in that's just more of an exploratory state. And basically, open spaces help you feel more safe. Because back in the day, uh, if you're in a space that's too like enclosed, where you don't really know what might be behind you, right? When you can't see everything all around you, then a tiger might attack you, right? In modern times, we don't have that issue anymore, but we still carry on that subconscious evolutionary fear. That's their explanation, right? For us indigenous people, it's more that open spaces help us literally connect to who we really are, the openness of who we are, to multidimensional space itself, which is literally the source of creativity. Whereas more cozy spaces help us more focus, because now when it's time to polish stuff, right, being in too much of an open space might make you more ungrounded. Being in a more cozy space helps you be more grounded, more focused. So this is how you literally use, space itself for inducing different mental states. Interestingly enough, you can use time itself as a form of space, which is why, the incubation state is so important. When you're leaving it aside, you're literally using time as a way of creating space away from your work so that you can generate ideas in the background. At least that's how I see the incubation stage of creativity, right? Now, you can also use different tools to generate different mental states, according to this book, right? Mind Management. And I want to quote from the book right here. He says here, he talks about the difference between grippy tools and slippy tools, right? Which is what I put in my flyer when I advertised today's lesson. So he says here, I also choose my tools according to the mental state I'm trying to promote. Some tools are grippy, meaning they make it easy to stay on task. You can write with a pen and paper without distraction. So you're more focused. You're in a more focused mental state. If you want to polish stuff, right? That's what the grippy tools are good for. Other tools are slippy, meaning they make it easy to get off task. You can write faster on a computer than you can with pen and paper, but it's easy to get distracted. The downside of grippy tools is the grippier the tool, the less likely what you produce with that tool will become a finished product. The upside of slippy tools is that if you can manage to stay on task with the slippy tool, you'll produce your finished product faster than the grippy tool. So you can use tools as well to induce different mental states. Every tool you use has a symbiotic relationship with your abilities while using that tool. A chimp fishing for ants with a stick can use her hand for another purpose while holding that stick. Whatever tool you use will make it easier to do some things while making it harder to do other things. For example, a laptop is a very slippy tool for a writer. You can write prose very quickly, and you can quickly navigate between documents and applications. You can do research, stitch together writing from various places, or draw simple diagrams. But because the laptop is so slippy, you can easily get distracted. You can get stuck surfing the web or fiddling around on social media. With a slippy tool, you can quickly turn any thought into a finished product, but you can just as easily turn any thought into a path to distraction. By contrast, a notebook and pen is a very grippy tool for writing. Once you start writing in a notebook, there's no way for the notebook to distract you. There are no notifications and you can't use it to look anything up. You can do lots of writing in a notebook, but you're unlikely to use that writing as a final product. It's best to be in the explore mental state when writing in a notebook. You're trying out ideas, but those ideas won't really come to fruition until you revisit them in a generate mental state with a slippier tool. If a tool is designed for a specific outcome, it can hit a sweet spot between slippy and grippy. The portable word processor I use for my morning writing habit is a good example. The Alpha Smart Neo is simply a keyboard with a cheap one-color LCD screen, the kind you would find on an old-school graphing calculator. The Alpha Smart is designed for writing and writing only. It has a full keyboard, but the Alpha Smart has no internet capability, so there's no chance you'll end up surfing the web. You can write so easily on the Alpha Smart. It feels like a slippy tool, but since that's all you can do, it's also quite grippy. The Alpha Smart is a good tool for staying within a mental state. You can only view about four lines of type on the screen at a time, which makes it difficult to do any editing. Even if you wanted to switch into the polished mental state, you would have a hard time, so you keep writing. I mostly use the Alpha Smart for exploratory writing sessions, where the writing is more about exercising the ideas in my mind, trusting that they'll resurface later. However, if I happen to capture some writing I don't want to lose, I can transfer that writing to my laptop via a USB cable. The USB cable transfer is one of many inconvenient things about the Alpha Smart, and that's the point. Sometimes you want a tool that can do certain things so you can focus more deeply on the things that you can do. You can make a colorful oil painting with a pencil, but the limitations of a pencil reduce the number of factors you can worry about. You can worry about color, and you can worry about the character of brushstrokes on the completed canvas. A pencil will focus your mind on the shapes you're drawing and the overall arrangement of your composition. It's no wonder that for years before Vincent van Gogh used color in groundbreaking ways, he worked strictly in black and white. He mastered one aspect of painting before mastering another. Similarly, Georgia O'Keeffe also focused on writing in black and white early in her artistic journey, ignoring the colors she had previously gone mad about, which itself is an important lesson. You master one thing before the other. It's interesting they mentioned about how different tools have their advantages and drawbacks. Similarly, I think there are different mediums can have their advantages and drawbacks, right? Because I just read a passage from Audre Lorde's essay, Age, Race, Class, and Sex, about the power of poetry for people to express themselves and for their own self-discovery because of its economicity, its brevity, it's more accessible, right? And by the way, speaking of tools, before I got on this live, I found this wonderful artificial intelligence tool, AI tool called WordTune that summarizes documents for you and really makes them more focused, right? Putting you in that polished, focused mental state. And I wanted to read one of these summaries here from, sorry. Audre Lorde says here, on what the AI summarized, one of the paragraphs. Unacknowledged class differences rob women of each other's creative energy and insight. Poetry is the most economical art form and is done between shifts, in the hospital pantry, on the subway, and in scraps of paper. So even different mediums can put you into different states, right? Different mental states. And I feel like poetry, because of its brevity, can also bring more clarity. And so I was in this exploratory mental state when I read that, but suddenly, because of that passage, I became more focused. I went into this more generate and polished mental state immediately just by reading that passage. And I ended up writing a poem immediately, right? But it's also because I did a whole live on the whole essay yesterday morning, right? So I was, and then I took a break from it for a whole day's break. So there was an incubation period, right? Like following the 4 stages, which is why the poem came through so quickly just now. So I want to read this poem as well that I wrote just now. It's called Ode to Poetry, The Art of the Resource Poor. Inspired by Audre Lorde's observation of poetry as accessible not just for reader but for writer too. Sandwiched in the subway, mouth open in shock at unwanted touch, no money for counseling, no time for processing, no notebook with me. I do have this customer receipt with me, so I scribble something there showing myself what I feel. so that I at least have my heart and soul and paper mirror as witness and reflection, even if no one believes me. Later, oh wow, what a marvelous way to be loved like this. My every muscle, every movement towards them and away from them was not just felt, but deeply heard and so honored. I felt so touched. My petals around my mouth flew naturally to the nectar of their magnetic compassion, and my enthusiasm returned with slow maple syrup, moving towards me surely, but always fully engaged with my every response. I don't even have anything to write down this important memory except this chewing gum wrapper to be fully prepared for that luscious kiss. And sometimes on some nights, my forehead is pulsing with tension after a long day's work. My arms just droop into this pool of a bed. I have no time except for a few words. But thanks to the goddess of poetry, it is enough. Yep, and I wrote that poem just now. So to summarize, if you want, feel like these seven mental states can be put into these two broad categories of being either very spacious and expansive, exploring things, generating ideas, or being very focused and focusing on polishing your work, whether it be editing or verification or things like that, right? And the exploratory stage, when you're just exploring things and trying to generate ideas, you need open spaces for that, whether it be the top of a mountain, a field, looking at the sunny sky and the space between the sky and you, practicing sky gazing, or even the top of a skyscraper, right? Those are good places for generating ideas and just getting inspiration, right? And then once you're ready to polish your work, that's when you need to be a more cozy space in a small enclosed spaces like a coffee shop or something, right? So yeah, that's what today's live is focused on. That's all I wanted to say. It's a short live today, a short training. I am trying to make these trainings shorter and shorter, uh, so that you can have the information very quickly. All right, peace and love. Right there. Remember the four stages: preparation, incubation, illumination, verification, and the seven states: explore, generate, prioritize, recharge, research, polish, and demonstrate. And they all fall into the broad categories of spaciousness or a narrow focus. All right? Peace and love.